Yeah, as I said, this is the season of creation and harvest, traditional in the church calendar. And I thought, let's do the book of Joseph, because I don't think we've ever, not certainly in my time, looked at the book of Joseph. Joseph is Genesis 37 to 50. If you want to do some homework, go away and read Genesis 37 to 50. And I always want to say that actually, our emphasis in the way we teach the Bible here is not so much to teach you the Bible, but actually to teach you how to read the Bible and encourage you, because we all have Bibles at home and on our phones and everything else. But some of this ancient literature can feel quite foreign to us. So today, hopefully, this will be a bit of an introduction. We're going to be looking at Genesis 37 to 50 over the next 2 months. And hopefully this will help you to look at this passage with fresh eyes and read it in the way it was intended to be read. But I want to ask a bigger question, first of all, is why do we read the Old Testament? Why do we read the Old Testament? Well, we read the Old Testament because as Christians we want to understand Jesus better. And more specifically, when I say that, we want to broaden our vision of Jesus. Increase your vision of Jesus, because he is very big. He's far too big than your brains can actually comprehend. But reading the Old Testament helps us. And I just want to illustrate this for you because Jesus wants you to increase your vision of him. And it appears over and over again in his teaching. If you go back to Palm Sunday and Jesus' triumphal entry into Jerusalem on the donkey, and then straight away he heads for the temple and he gets all aggressive and he turns the tables over in the temple and everyone's shocked and freaked out and everything else. And then he tells them this story. He tells them a parable of a loving father who has a field, and he puts some tenants in the field and he sends his servants, and the tenants in the field treats his servants really badly. But he thinks, well, I'm going to send my son into that field, and I'm sure because it's my son, they won't treat him that badly. But he sends the son, and what do the tenants do? They grab the son, they beat him, they strip him, and they kill him. And Jesus tells that story, and then afterwards he adds on the end of the story, he says, yeah, but what they didn't realize was the stone that the builders rejected has become the capstone. Now, if you're an ordinary 21st century Gentile, like most of us are, and you didn't know your Old Testament, you'd be going, okay, that's an interesting parable. Yeah, I can sort of see where Jesus is going with. He's aligning himself with the capstone. But if you're Jewish and you hear that parable, you are thinking, whoa, wait a minute. This is the story of Joseph. Yeah. Oh, yeah, the beloved son, the father who sends his beloved son into the field, and the son is stripped and beaten and sent off into slavery. You see, Jesus wants us to go back into the Old Testament and see the picture of him there. And we know that in the story of Joseph, if you've seen Andrew Lloyd Webber's, the Technicolor Dreamcoat or whatever, the story doesn't end there. It doesn't end with slavery and prison. It ends with the capstone that was rejected by his own, the stone that was rejected by him becoming the capstone. It has a happy ending in Egypt. But let's get back to Genesis. And we see in the story a complicated family. And the way to understand this, you need to understand where we are quickly in the Bible. Genesis 1, we've got creation and fall. You had Cain and Abel. You had Noah's flood. And then you have Abraham and Sarah. And God makes this massive promise to Abraham. And he says, your offspring are going to be bigger than the sand of on the beach. And you're going to be a blessing to every nation. And then we get this really complicated family starting to develop. You have Abraham has a son called Isaac, and then Isaac has a son called Jacob. And Jacob gets renamed to this funny word, Israel, which means the one who wrestles with God, because Jacob wrestles with God. So if you want to understand what Israel means means the one who wrestles with God. And interestingly, you'll know that in Jacob's family line, you have two wives. You have Leah and you have Rachel. And Jacob, the love of Jacob's life was always Rachel. That's the one he wanted to marry. But Rachel's father conned him to marry Leah first. And it's all a bit tense because Leah's the one who can produce children. So you start to get the brothers being born to Leah: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. And the reason I'm telling you this is because they become the 12 tribes of Israel. You see, and they will appear later on. And then, because Rachel can't conceive, she brings her servants into the mix. Again, the Bible can feel very strange. And of course, from the servant Bilhah, you get Dan and Naphtali, and then from the servant Zilpah, you get Gad and Asher. These are all brothers and stepbrothers, and complicated, really complicated family. But then finally, Rachel conceives, and she has a son. And the love of Israel's life is Rachel, and the firstborn is Joseph. Joseph, the apple of his father's eye. And I want you to, the way you understand the story is through a set of keys. It's a bit like playing Minecraft. There are two keys which I want you to hold on to as you read the story. And the first one is clothes. That'll unlock the story, and the second one is dreams. And we're going to look at those two today. The first one is clothes. Obviously, the Technicolor dream coats. In Hebrew, it's like this ornate coat of many colors. It's a very posh thing. It marks Joseph out in status from his other brothers. The other brothers are laborers in the field, but if you put this coat on, you're not going to be a laborer. You're going to be the one who stands on the side and, watches the other one's work. And of course, that heightens the tension of it all. And the interesting thing about the story is you're going to keep seeing clothes. If you get to Genesis 38, you're going to find that a very strange chapter. But it's actually, a lot of it's about clothes. This is the recurring motif right through the whole book of Joseph. If everyone's got any questions about Genesis 38, I don't have time to cover it today, but do ask. And then Potiphar's wife steals Joseph's coat as he's led into temptation. Joseph changes from prison garments to royal robes as he goes to meet Pharaoh. And then right at the end of the story in Genesis 45, Joseph gives his brothers new clothes. Clothes are the recurring key. And when you understand clothes, they unlock the story for you. But the second thing is dreams. And there's two dreams in this passage that Joseph has. And the first dream is the one about the land. And the second dream is one about the sky. So you're starting to see this imagery coming, it's like land and sky in the order of creation. The sheaves of wheat are bowing down. Joseph's sheaf is standing tall, and all the other brothers' sheaves of wheat are bowing down to Joseph, you see. And this is interesting because when we see what happens after that. But then the second dream he has is, in verse 9 is even more astonishing. He says, do you know, guys, the sun, moon, and 11 stars are going to bow down to me. I mean, that takes it to a whole new level, and you can understand why the brothers get jealous of their little brother who's slightly got ambitions above his station. And as we glimpse into the future, you can see how these dreams begin to come true. In the earthly realm, Joseph's wheat will go on to become the bread of salvation to all the surrounding nations. And Joseph is elevated from a prison cell to a position of unthinkable status in the kingdom of Egypt. He's second in command to Pharaoh. I mean, how do you do that? It's massive. But he's not there, you need to remember this, he's not there because he's good at his job, necessarily. He is good at his job, but it's so much more than that. Pharaoh will give Joseph status precisely because through his relationship with God, the creation behaves according to Joseph's word. Joseph predicts the famine that will happen in Egypt in the next 7 years ahead. And Pharaoh would have had hundreds and hundreds of wise sages around him, but none of them could predict how the creation was going to behave. This is more than just a political elevation. This is cosmic in its nature. Now, and it's good that you see the cosmic, the heavens and the earth, the sun and the moon, the crops and the seasons are at Joseph's beck and call. And this is a really, really cool image. And it helps us to be reminded of what comes in the distant future. This is one of my favorite passages, I think, in the whole of the New Testament. Paul says in Colossians 1, chapters 15 to 20, he says, the Son is the image of the invisible God. Just meditate on this for a bit. Just think about how big and crazy. This is the most shocking thing that Paul the Apostle ever said, by the way. The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and earth, visible, invisible, whether thrones, powers, rulers, authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together, and he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn among the dead, so that in everything he might have supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him, and through him reconcile himself to things on earth or in heaven by making peace through the blood of the cross. Nobody in the history of the world has been spoken about like this. And you have to ask the question, where does Paul get an idea like that? This carpenter from Nazareth is there at the dawn of the universe, holding the whole universe together. And the short answer of where Paul gets that from is the resurrection. But none of the disciples got it then. They didn't get it. I mean, Paul took about 3 years to get it, but the rest took a while because it's so big. It's so massive for our brains to comprehend. But the clues were there all the way along. Clues in the stories like Joseph, for instance. Clues in the Psalms. Clues in the prophets. In the things Isaiah said. Last week, I was inspired when Canaan said, in Iran, we were worshipping Christ even before he was born. And I thought, yeah, that's really interesting. Because the Magi came from there. And they saw the stars. And it was the stars at just the right time and just the right place that led them to the child being born in Bethlehem. That is mad, isn't it? Literally, the sun, moon, and stars bow down to him. The cosmic Christ. He's massive. And where there's hunger, this is some of the clues. Jesus creates fish and bread, and after feeding the 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish, just consider that if you're going to create loaves and fish for 5,000 people, you have to create fish. You have to create wheat. You don't just pull that out of a bag. You have to create it from nothing. And he tells them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger. Whoever believes in me shall never thirst. These are some of the things which I just love pouring and actually meditating on. When Jesus is on the cross, from the 6th hour to the 9th hour, there is darkness as the sun hides behind the moon. And Matthew records that there was this great earthquake. The sky quakes, the earth breaks. As the dream becomes a nightmare. Do you see the imagery? Do you see the imagery? How absolutely saturated all this is with meaning. As the beloved Son, sent by the Father into a broken and hungry world, is rejected by his own, stripped of his seamless robe. Oh yeah, duh. Jesus had a seamless robe from top to bottom, that the soldiers took off and sort of gambled for when he was being crucified. And he's left to die on the cross, and as he hangs on the cross, the sky quakes and the land breaks as the dream becomes a nightmare. For all the disciples, everyone around there runs away. It's a nightmare. It's a nightmare they could never have seen, never have envisaged. But what a beautiful dawn awaits. And the stone the builders rejected becomes the capstone. It's only after the resurrection that Jesus' disciples fully understand. They fully appreciate it. Their vision of him now exceeds all of their wildest dreams. And you can only get that if the resurrection is true. If Christ really was there at the creation of the universe, in other words, the author of all life, the only one who can bring life out of death, out of nothing. The sun, moon, and 11 stars really do bow down to him. And it's no accident, let me tell you, that we worship him 2,000 years later. History and creation have actually ordained it. That's just beautiful. When you think about it in those terms, it's really quite beautiful. And so as I begin to close, I want you to increase your vision of Jesus. This harvest, increase your vision of Jesus. Look at the beauty of the natural world. When I was on my bike over the sabbatical, it was amazing just to have the time to look at a tree. I mean, I've become a bit of a tree hugger, I have to say. But you can just stand with your bike and look at a tree and celebrate the work that Christ has made with his hands. This is the handiwork of Christ, my Christ, who I worship. That's beautiful. It's bigger than I can comprehend. The one the sun, the moon, the stars really bow down to. And in this life there is suffering and there is glory, and we all go through things like that. But if you increase your vision of him, you begin to realize that God is with us every single step of the way through that. So lean into him. Bring him into your prayers. If you've got time today, and the Earth Day icon is going to be with us over the month of September, but go and have a look at it. It's really beautiful, profound piece of art by Karen Blompier, actually iconography by Karen Blompier. But I want us, this creation, this season of creation, to increase our vision of Jesus. He is the carpenter's son from Nazareth, who was there 2,000 years ago, but he's so much more than that. He is eternal. Ask the Holy Spirit to show you that eternity. We are going to stand now and sing, "Be Thou My Vision." Please stand.